Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a fantastic weekend and off to a great start. I love having these interviews, these panels, so much rich content, so much good, valuable nuggets. I hope you're grab a pen. If you're missing this one, you can't stay for the whole time. Remember, all the episodes are available twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at bizbookpubhub.com. Without any further delay, let me just jump into introducing this episode. Publishing your book isn't the finish line, it's the starting point. That moment your book becomes available marks the beginning of a new chapter, not just as a writer, but as an author with a message to share and a business to grow. What many authors overlook is that the biggest opportunities come after the book is out in the world. That's when you can deepen connections with readers, strengthen your brand, and use your book as a powerful tool to drive visibility and revenue. And that's where the Biz Book Pub Hub comes in. We're a community designed to support authors in all phases of their journey. We offer guidance, resources, and trusted expert partnerships to help you turn your book into a long-term business asset. If you're ready to take that next step, you can visit bizbookpubhub.com to get started. And now I'm excited to introduce our panelists who are here today to share how they've used their books to expand their influence, grow their platforms, and make a bigger impact. With me today is CB Bowman, who wrote Courage to Leap and Market, an author's roadmap to self-marketing your book, a practical, empowering guide that gives authors the tools and confidence to take charge of their book marketing, build lasting visibility, and turn their message into real momentum. Also, we have Jennifer Eggers, who wrote Mastering the C-Suite, the senior leader's playbook to build a C-level mindset, command respect, and lead an enterprise. A powerful playbook for executives ready to lead with confidence, influence, and impact. It offers mindset shifts, real-world strategies, and actionable tools to thrive at the highest levels of leadership. And Simone Morris, who wrote 52 Tips for Owning Your Career, Practical Advice for Career Success, a practical, empowering guide filled with weekly strategies and actionable insights to help professionals take control, grow with intention, and thrive in today's evolving workplace. Please join me in welcoming CB, Jennifer, and Simone. And CB, we're going to kick off this with a question for you to just expand for us a little bit. Who do you have in mind when you were writing your book? And welcome to the show.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate you, Robbie. My book, Courage to Leap and Market, here it is right here. I wrote it for everyone who writes a book. It's actually just a supplement to Robbie's work. After I wrote my first book, Courage to Leap and Lead, I realized there were so many opportunities that I missed in terms of marketing. And I want to say, I don't do everything that's in this book because it's a lot. So you could pick and choose what works for you. But having something that you could have a checklist, because there's also a workbook inside, to say, I think I'm going to do this, or I think I'm going to do that, was so incredibly valuable. I wanted to be able to share that with every author out there.
I appreciate it, especially the first time through. You're a marketing professional. You're writing the book, and then you're like, wait, there's so much more that comes next. So yeah, very much a compliment to the work that I speak about all the time. Jennifer, how about you? Who did you have in mind for this book?
Yeah, I am a senior level business advisor. So I wrote the book for people that are ascending to the C-suite, people who are in the C-suite, perhaps new in the C-suite, or they got there and they're sort of struggling, or maybe want to be more effective or add more value.
I love it. And Simone, how about you? Who did you have in mind?
Similar to Jennifer, I had professionals in the workplace, so mid-level, who have a desire to ascend to a higher level in the organization and are just not getting there.
Got it. And is this your first book, Simone?
No, I've got about 4 or 5 books at this point.
Wow. Okay. So it's been a while since you were a first-time author. In fact, that means all of you, I know all of you have multiple books, and the people who are listening in are probably thinking, first of all, that's very impressive, which it is. Simone, when you were first getting started, do you recall there being any angstiness about that first book, and how is that different from approaching this new book? Like, how do you think your own mindset might have changed as you were approaching being an author?
Yeah, well, I've been talking about being an author for a very long time. And when I wrote my first book, I had just become a new mother. And that point in time, it's a pivotal moment. There's an identity shift and your purpose, you're reflective about it. And so I was really thinking about my daughter wanting to have some legacy work. You know, she's a baby at that point, but I want to leave something. I really have to do this because this is an important moment. And that was the momentum that got me to reach the finish line with the very first book.
I like the idea of legacy. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And then, of course, once you learn how to write a book, then you think, I can do this again and again. Jennifer, let me ask you about that part, because you've got a couple of books out there. We only talked about the first one in the introduction. How did that shift for you? Like from one book
It shifted big time. I mean, I remember so the first book was very much like, you know, if I do nothing else in my life, this book has to be published. And so it was very, very personal. I did it with co-author, but it was blood, sweat, and tears. We did all of it ourselves, had almost no help. It took 2 years. We edited as much as we could. I finally hired an edit. Actually, it went through 2 rounds of professional editing. There were still typos in it, despite the fact that, you know, we had so many iterations, and it ended up that my assistant and I literally went through it with a fine-tooth comb, like a year after it was published, to try to, you know, clean that up. And I kind of just decided after that, never again. And so the second book had to be done differently. So I hired a book coach that worked with me. And so we wrote an outline, and then it was a chapter a week. You know, I wrote the chapter, he edited it, gave it back to me. We talked about it, made the changes. Then it went to an assessor to see if it was viable, kind of go through all of that through the publisher. And then, it got published much more professionally with a lot more help, a lot more professional editing, and a publisher was much more active in the second one. So, it really changed for me. I think, the other thing was, of course, you always write I don't know about everybody, but for me, even the first book was really intended to drive business. But the second book was very much a lot more laser focused. I don't think I started my thought process on the second book was more like, okay, what's the book I need to drive revenue? Not what's the book do I want to write that could drive revenue? So it was a very, very different mindset on the second book, and much more clear, much faster. We were in it for probably 9 months.
And just for those who are listening, which is the second book?
Oh, I'm sorry. The second book is Mastering the C-Suite.
The one that we were just talking about. So much more intentional. That is such a big shift, I think, for authors. Like, Simone was talking about legacy, and you just mentioned, Jennifer, the idea of like the book you feel compelled to write, right? That first book, there's an innate like effort to get a book out. And then you learn so much about the process, and you think, golly gee, this could have been a little more strategic. I could have had better team support. I could have had better professional support. CB Bowman, you also have 2 different books out there. What was your experience like? Any differences between how you approach the 2?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I started off writing chapters in other people's books. And I decided, wait a second, you're supporting their journey more than you're supporting yours. And so I decided to write my own. My first book, Courage to Leap and Lead, I decided to write, it's Courage to Leap and Lead, a roadmap for redefining failure into success. And that is because a colleague of mine asked me to be a keynote speaker in her association about courage. And I thought, oh, God, I don't know anything about courage. And she said to me, you're the most courageous woman I know. Please speak about courage. And funny thing happened on the way to the forum. As I was working on the presentation, I realized, wait a second, people have told me that I'm courageous all my life. Perhaps there's something there. And so it just started to flow. My first book took me a year to date before it was published. My second book, Courage to Leap and Market, took me 6 months. And I decided along the way that I would have a whole series on courage. So the next one that I'm working on is Courage to Leap and Pivot.
Wow. Okay. I'm in the process of working on my 4th book, which is going to come out soon. Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue. And I like to be very clear from the outset, I still don't identify as a writer. um, and I really wrote that first book because I'm in the National Speakers Association. I know I have connections with some of you through that as well. And just writing a book was such an important part of that process. You have to have a book. You have to have a book. You have to have a book. No one really talks a lot about what to do with the book, but like you have to have a book. You have to have a book. And man, was that a lot of effort. Kind of like what UCB said a moment ago about writing that second book about marketing ideas, because you were like, I wish people knew this. And Jennifer, I want to go back to something you just mentioned about how you tied the second book to specific goals in your business. What are the questions you asked yourself differently for the second book? You said that the second book was less, I have a book to share with the world, and more, what book could my business benefit from? Like, how are you thinking about approaching that second book?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, in the first book, it was very much this message that needed to get out. The second book was more, I was brainstorming with my team, and we said, what could we do that would, really showcase what we offer to the world? And, we started talking about some of the themes that I've seen over 30 years of coaching and 30 years of, consulting and really working with senior teams in various capacities. And, this one of the guys on my team said, why don't you write a playbook? Like, you've got all these little soundbite plays. Like, if you're in this high stakes situation, do this. If you're in this situation, do that. If you're in this, he said, why don't you just write a playbook? And he's a real sports guy. So, it was really interesting. So we started thinking about, well, what are the plays that, I've seen over and over again? And the more I got into it, the more excited I got, because I was like, oh my God, there's so much here that I never really, even thought about. And so it really became, we kind of filled in the title later, but it really started out as like this sort of senior leader playbook thing. And that was really, I think the thought process was, how do we differentiate my, 30 plus years of working with senior leaders from every coach that got their coaching certificate during COVID that, hung out their shingle, and, they coach in a very, very different way, because, and they have to, and they have their place, but they coach in a very, very different way than I do because of the experience that I have. And so it was like, how do we really showcase that? And so the book became, how to do that. So I'm no less passionate about it than I was resilience, but it was so, once we came up with the idea, it was so simple to fill in the blanks and fill in the chapters.
Yeah. I love that you have a team. So you have people who understand the work that you do. And for those who are listening, if you don't have a team, maybe you have a mentor, accountability partner, business bestie that can help give you that sort of feedback and like help you think that through. And of course, you can always go to the source, have a conversation with 5 to 10 people that are your ideal readers of a book you're thinking about, and hear from them whether these ideas resonate. Is this the problem they think they have? Because that's the other thing. Like, you often, as experts, we see problems that people have that they don't know they have, and so they're not ready to buy from us. So a book can really help bridge that. Simone, I want to come back to you and ask how you came up with the idea of this latest book, 52 Tips for Owning Your Career. Was this similarly like because you were like, okay, I have an offer, I have an idea in my practice that I wanted to draw attention to? Like, or is this more of a passion, you feel compelled to share something just to help other people not stumble?
Yeah. So I do career coaching for a living, and I'm hearing from clients on career challenges. But in addition to that, I have a podcast called The Power of Owning Your Career. So I'm having conversations with people sharing their formulas for owning their career, their challenges. And the book before 52 Tips is The Power of Owning Your Career. So it has been a progression to get more niche down with, hey, how about small, digestible things that you can do on a weekly basis in your career, so you're not boiling the ocean? And also, if you are challenged with resources to get career coaching, there's still something you can do. So that was my thought process around developing this resource book.
Now, do you think this resource book is more for someone who is already working with you, would benefit from reading it as they're getting work from you, coaching from you? Is it also for someone who's thinking about getting coaching from you to get them in a better mindset? And also for people who know they can't afford to hire a coach? Like, is it sort of meet all three of those audiences?
Yes, the answer is C. Yes, all of the above. Yeah, it sounded like the choice C. multiple choice.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's all of the above, because I want to put people in the driver's seats for their careers. And I've been saying that for a very long time. And so this is a way to meet people where they are. So yes, you can be interested in hiring me as a coach, but you don't have to be. You can still get introduced to me. In fact, I'm going to be talking about this book to some students, some college students, first generation college students later this summer. And so, I say that it's for the professional, but it's for the professional plus people who are really wanting to take ownership, to be hands-on in their careers.
And Jennifer, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did. I was going to add something, and then Simone said it too, and I just wanted to highlight the theme. So you mentioned, really talking to some of the readers and whatnot. I was talking to a CEO who would definitely be in my target market. And one of the things she said to me was that she was actually talking about my resilience book. And she said, I asked her, how did she like it? And she said, well, I didn't really read the whole book. I just read little pieces. Like if I need this piece, I go read this chapter. Well, the irony of that is that's absolutely not the way to consume the resilience book. But what it said to me was, wow, that's how she wants to consume a book. And so this notion of bite-size things that people could just kind of swoop in and grab their little nugget, right? So be really clear about, this chapter is about X. When you need X, read this chapter. And that's what I love Simone's ideas with you've got these little short tips that you can pull out. I think that seems to be a little bit more of the way people are consuming books. And that was, and maybe some aren't, but it was certainly why I wrote mine the way I did. And that was very different from the first book. So good theme
this
there.
Also, I think, Jennifer, speaks to knowing your audience. So I imagine senior leaders who have a lot of, people competing for their time, a lot of different priorities, a lot of plate spinning, may have a different approach to how they consume this kind 100%. Of content than an early career professional who doesn't yet have all those demands on their time and is just trying to learn everything they possibly can to get a leg up and land that first great job. And so knowing who you're writing to might also change not the content even so much as the format, but also possibly the content or the emphasis. And I think that's a really good perspective for us to take. I think too many of us do, particularly if that first book, write a book that we're feeling more compelled to write and less a book that is really clearly tied to either our audience or our business. But then look, we continue to write books as we hone in on it over time. CB, I'm because you've got these two different books, and they serve different audiences, but they have that sort of theme that you're bringing them together under and around courage. Is this lead to more speaking engagements for you? Are you doing marketing for authors? Like, how are you tying the books in a dotted line to the business that you have?
Well, that's an interesting question because I am the CEO of the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches. And at the same time, I have the podcast on Courage to Leap and Lead. For me, it was about tying the audiences together through courage. I see so many coaches who believe, from my CEO role, I see so many coaches who believe that coaching is about asking questions, which is one model. But at ACEC, our model is being an enterprise-wide business partner with your client. And so it's a very different role. If you're going into the C-suite as a coach and you go in and say, so how are you doing and what do you think is the solution? That engagement is not going to be lasting very long. If you go in as a partner, knowing their audience, knowing their employees, knowing their competitors, et cetera, then you need to belong to ACEC. So in writing these two books on courage, it was mostly for the client, but also for the coach. Have the courage to go toe to toe. So the first book, in Redefining Failure, speaks to organizations that have launched products, have launched services that have not been successful, and how do you look at them so that they become successful? And that's from my experience being in marketing with General Foods in the consumer product industry. The second one is also a marketing book, but it's positioned slightly different for the authors. The third one will be about people in the C-suite who lose their opportunity. So they're all tied together in an interesting way around courage and around what's next for you.
And I want to give kudos to CB because I'm a big fan of getting reviews, and I see written reviews on Amazon as social proof. And for your first book, Courage to Leap and Lead, you have 53 written reviews, which it takes a tremendous amount of effort. And we talked about that the last time I had you on the show about how you approach that. But you know, it is a process to do this, and I know that Jennifer, you've approached this as well. You've had a plan to get some reviews for your books. I've got your first book has 23 reviews, 45 total ratings, and then you also got reviews, even some recent reviews, which is awesome, on your latest book. Jennifer, how have you approached thinking about reviews, thinking about them in the context of that launch and connecting with your ideal readers during those early moments when the book's coming out? Any lessons learned from book 1 to book 2 that you could share with us?
I'm so bad at this. So, I mean, the one thing I will say, so I certainly had a spreadsheet of, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 people that, agreed to write a review that, we asked to do that and sent them the book and whatnot. But, there's lots of lessons learned. So one is a lot of the, the advanced praise, if you will, was solicited very specifically from, certain people. So we had to find a way then to sort of get them to stick that on Amazon, which, we had, I guess, mixed success on that. But I certainly had a spreadsheet of the people that I wanted, to write reviews that volunteered. I solicited people to help with that. Lots of people volunteered. I would say of the volunteers, we probably got, if 25% actually did it, that was probably a lot. The other thing is that the reviews kind of, the way reviews work on Amazon kind of flies in the face of my marketing strategy. So the marketing strategy is get the book in the hands of as many prospective clients as you possibly can, as fast as you can. So I sent the book out to, hundreds of people, and that was just, it's a calling card for me. I mean, certainly we sell the book and we've got, lots of, real sales as well. But, right off the bat, I sent it to a ton of people. Once you send a book out, they want a hard copy, right? They are not really eligible to write a review on Amazon. It's not as I guess highly ranked or whatever. So we had a lot of reviews that were Amazon was kind of holding on to that I knew were there because people sent me copies of the, screenshots, but they just weren't getting published. So that was it's kind of a mess we had to deal with. So I still think there's more than there really are, just from what I know people have submitted. But, I've struggled with this review thing. And there's part of me that is, I'm a little cynical about it because I don't, the people that are, the book's already more than paid for itself in revenue that it's generated. So, no complaints. So I don't know that the reviews are quite as critical, but certainly to get your book, out on Amazon, it's certainly helpful. I don't feel like that's how people are finding our book. So, I'm a little skeptical about the review. So I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask, Robbie. Maybe that's
actually, this is great. I want to have this conversation. This is fantastic because it sounds like you made a real effort and you ran into some stumbling blocks. Let's talk through this a little bit. So my reasons for focusing on the reviews is that more than studies have shown, and I think you'll innately agree with this, more than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase. That's like a thing that multiple studies have found that. But very few people are in the habit of writing reviews, like tiny, not 10%, more, 1%. I don't know. I have a friend who's a elite Yelper. So on that yelp.com site, she will like write reviews for like a bike trail. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there are a few people in the world who are like that, but I don't know anyone who does that. And so, getting even a handful, even 20 people, and which you've done for both your books, if getting 20 people to write a review, they have a disproportionate impact on everyone else who comes and thinks about buying your book. And particularly in a crowded field, which your books are in these competitive leadership, senior leadership spaces, resilience, all these topics are a lot of books being written. So it helps differentiate your book. And then if someone's thinking about having you speak and they glance, this is part of the overall package of how you present yourself, sort of the credibility of your message versus someone else's message. I think the reviews count for that as well. But really, it's about engaging people in your network to get the other business. So it's not just reviews for reviews' sake, but it's the kind of stuff that you were already doing, which is reaching out to people, sharing your message, inviting them to be part of this journey. And so when you were talking a moment ago about reviews and whether or not they have the same weight, there are verified reviews. And so verified reviews means a person purchased the book from Amazon before leaving the review. And that's why I encourage my authors to lower their book price, their Kindle book price, I should say, to 99 cents to facilitate that step happening and making it more likely that the review is going to be accepted and then published and then also carry that extra weight. But the recency of your reviews, the quantity of reviews, and this is a little subjective, but the quality of the reviews, not just positivity, but the fact that they're not just one sentence, plus the verified reviews, all helps you rank higher on searches. And that's really helping your discoverability for longer term sales. But really, I mean, I think it's part of the whole package. Tell me a little bit about your goals. It sounds like it's speaking as well as coaching. It's a little bit of a combination of things, Jennifer.
I would say for this book, it's really to sell the coaching. I mean, it's really coaching. I do a bit of speaking, but most of my speaking is workshops, corporate workshops, and team facilitation. I do strat planning, things like that. So, I mean, the book may not. I don't know that the book is going to sell that, but it's really about coaching. So, yeah, and we did do the 99% promotion for 2 weeks to kind of launch it at the beginning and become a bestseller and all the machinations you do on Amazon that NSA laughs at. And they may laugh all they want. My clients seem to like that, so it's okay. But I'll tell you what also generated a lot of reviews. A lot of reviews was your 99-cent cross promo deal that you've done. I mean, that really helped us. And I mean, just meeting these guys, like, this is super, it's super fun to meet other authors. And, then we get to review each other's books and share notes with each other. And I think that's been, a huge win for getting reviews as well.
Awesome. Hey, Simone, you've now done this a few different times. Have reviews been part of your process, or how do you think about getting your book into the right people's hands? Oh, go ahead and unmute yourself.
So I have this different perspective. It's like, what are the requirements to get a job? So do I need reviews to sell my book? And I have not spent enough time on reviews. So that's why I was happy to participate in your program to really put some intentionality, some structure and focus. My perspective is it requires a lot of follow-up because there are a lot of people who say, yeah, 99 cents, terrific, I'll get it, but then don't follow through with the review. And so if you don't have the time or resources to really stick to following up multiple times with people to get that review, then the reviews can be lingering out there. So I use different strategies outside of Amazon to get the book in front of people. In fact, recently I was at a book festival and with 40 other local authors. And it was an opportunity to have my book in hand, to learn from other authors, and to also get up close with the consumer and talk about the passion behind the book and get people to purchase the book.
Yeah, this is really great. I loved hearing also the feedback from both of you that just being part of the Kindle cross promotion campaign, which is how we're all connected for this particular panel, is helpful. I've had authors with books that are 8-10 years old say, I've stopped talking about this book. I don't, a lot of my audience is newer. They don't know I even wrote this first book. I'm on to my second or third book, but that putting that book in the campaign and putting a little bit of attention on it for a few weeks helped bolster like tons of engagement, feedback, people, reaching out, reading the book, writing reviews, plus the stuff from the fellow authors. So I think it's a nice idea that you think about a few times a year, how are we going to keep a focus on our books, particularly those of us that have more than one book, there is a way in which the newest book gets all the attention, and then the other books sort of fade a little bit, even though when they first came out, like they were our babies and we loved them, It's like, I don't want to forget about that book. So I think this can be really helpful. CB, do you have a particular marketing strategy that led to a lot of books either being sold or given to the right audience? Like, just how do you think about getting a quantity of books into the right people's hands?
Well, for my first book launch, I had over 200 people online. And I believe that came from previously networking and writing reviews for other people. I think it's really hard to ask people to write reviews and you haven't given back. There's no feed forward there. So I'm very conscious of putting myself in that kind of environment of reviewing other books. It's difficult because I get like 10 people sending me books, especially with the podcast, at a time. So to read everything is kind of challenging. But you can read some of it and still do a really good review.
Right.
So I think it's like putting yourself out there to help other people. And then when you need their help, then they're more than willing to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I belong to some really large networking groups that we're all authors, or 90% are authors, and we understand the importance of a review.
That's a good idea.
That's really important. I want to give a shout out to Bruce Shear. He's a fellow author who wrote Inspire Your Buyers, Go to Market with a Story That Sizzles. And he has written a review for every campaign author. Like, he's been in multiple campaigns and he writes a review for every book. He buys every single book and he does a little picture of himself with the ebook, the Kindle book on his phone. He does a little photo. And he hadn't been doing that. Like he wasn't someone who had been writing reviews until he had a book. And then he had this realization of just how important it is. And I just am looking now, he has 110 written reviews for his book. So and that's a lot of that's in recent months. Like, people are like, oh, they want to give back to him. They see his effort, and it's just like, it's not a one-to-one. It's not a transaction. It's just that he's the kind of person who shows up, and so people want to support. So it just fits with all kinds of networking. It's not just that's just true for how we show up in life. We show up the kind of person who helps others, and people are more likely to want to help us. We also feel better about asking, because we know we will help others. So I think what I'll really take from your message is I will unabashedly ask for reviews, because I've written so many reviews. But I've also had people, this came up earlier, like, they not only I have a whole process for follow-up, Simone, like you said, like, it's not a one-time ask. I have people, I send out the request to join my launch team, and there's a specific form to fill out, and they reply, yeah, sure, happy to help, but don't fill out the form. And then I got to keep track of that and be like, wait, did you fill the form? Can I, so it's like, I want the affirmative, because if you fill the form, I'm going to nurture you through you filling out doing the steps, because I want you to follow through in your best intentions. But it is really funny how we're all very busy people, but it's really about getting the right attention from the right people. And I feels like all of us are talking about the books having a really clear fit with our businesses. I'd love to hear a little bit about what kind of lead magnets people are using. Like, do you have any bonus content, things like that? Jennifer, do you have something in particular that you put in your books that help drive people to either join your email list or go to your website or something like that?
Yeah, all of the tools that we provide, and there are numerous in the book, we have printed versions, downloadable versions that you can customize and edit. And so we get email addresses that way. There's a ClickFunnels attached to that, if they go there. And then we've also created another lead magnet that's just based on content from the book that, will be showing up on our website shortly, as soon as I can get my web designer to come back she's out on leave right now. So I'm like, come on. But yeah, I mean, in the book, we reference the landing page and we get some traffic there.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I've heard several authors who are traditionally published, like, that's a step that doesn't seem to always be a given. It feels like, I don't know, it's interesting. I feel like that's such a useful thing, both for the reader, because sometimes they don't want to write in the book, but there's questions in the book, but they want to write in the book. They'd rather have the download version, the PDF version. So I think it's really helpful. It's not always creating new content. I love the idea of like taking content from a book. I like to take pages from a book and just redo them in Canva and call it a workbook. Like it's just,
We've done that too.
yeah, just the steps in the book, but it's now
Did that with
yours.
resilience.
Yeah, and particularly if they're audiobooks or ebook as well, like because that's a very different format for taking in content and holding on to the information and saving it somewhere. Simone, how have you thought about this piece about connecting your book in with the business? Any kind of contact info, resources, downloads, etc.?
Yeah, we have resources in the book. So, for example, there is a checklist for the 52 tips that you can download from the website where you're checking off which tip you've accomplished. There's a professional development plan. So, from the book, it points you to the website, and we gather the email address that way and stay connected with them.
Awesome. I love this. And CB, what would you add for this?
Well, I haven't done any of those things, but I do want to tell you an interesting story about writing. My second book, my publisher refused to publish. And it was because he felt it was not in the business realm that I was working in. That's Courage to Leap and Market. So I think, excuse me, you have to be your own advocate in writing a book. It turns out that the second book was very popular, but to a different audience. And then it became part of the Courage series. And so I think that, when you are adamant about something, you have to stick to your guns. I'm fortunate in the fact that, through my association and through my networking group, there's a lot of business networking that I can do to sell the book and to use it for speaking as well as for just clients that I think would need the information. So a lot of my members in ACEC purchased the book to give to their clients. So it's a different kind of lead magnet.
Yeah, it's great. I think this really comes down to knowing how the book's going to be used after it comes out in the world. I think a lot of times we're so just taken over the process of just getting the book written and published. So even folks who are not being traditionally published, I think going through the process of creating that book proposal and thinking about the what comes after the book exists, the marketing plan, the outreach plan, the who is for plan. I think all that's really useful information for all kinds of authors to get clarity. I'd love to hear.
I just want to add one thing, Robbie.
Sure, Stevie.
When you believe that the marketplace needs your book, go for it. So when my publisher refused to publish my second book, I opened my own publishing house. So just don't let anything stop you. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you get that kind of clarity by talking to the people who you ultimately have as ideal readers in mind. And they're saying, oh my gosh, where's the book? Where's the book?
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons I don't write in secret. Like I make sure I start building a launch team while I'm still writing a book. Because if I can't get traction on a launch team, I'm probably not writing the right book. Like something's a little bit off about this. I'd love to hear an answer to the question, because I'm an author. So everyone just start thinking about their own answer. Like what doors have opened for you because I'm an author? So Jennifer, did something come to mind like that, now, because, there was life for you before being an author. And now there's life as an author.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is people started referring to me as an authority on specific topics, which, we did a resilience workshop and I had a resilience talk and, all of that before we wrote resilience, but I don't think anyone referred to me as the organizational resilience authority until there was something out there that was published that people could say, yes, this piece of work, makes you an authority. And I feel the same way about, C-suite transition expert. I don't know that I certainly do. I'd probably do 3 different, types of sort of advisory and coaching. I don't know that I would have called myself a C-suite transition expert until it's like, oh, she's got the book, she's and people have said that about me, and I'm like, oh, I like that, I'll steal that one. And so it sets me up to be something that, not that I'm not. I certainly had that expertise before, but it's like more well known and more, I think, established. So yeah, I think that's the underlying value. As I compete for advisory projects, I think it's you have a little more credibility when you go in and say, hey, let me send you my book first so you get to know me a little bit and then we'll talk. And
Yeah.
it's like you go in with a very different type of cachet that I wouldn't have really expected, quite honestly. Like, I don't think I really thought about that before.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful for people who are listening. There's a couple of things you said, but something you sort of tossed in there was how you're using the book as part of the process of closing a sale. That you can say here, I have a client that I work with in a coaching capacity as well as with her book launch. And so for her, by giving out her book during that sequence of like, oh, hey, let's have a conversation, the book informs her prospect about how she thinks about this topic.
Exactly.
And then they come to the conversation just a little more interested, a little more ready, a little more interested in her specifically, with real questions, not just, so what do you do exactly? So it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Simone, how would you answer the because I'm an author?
Well, I love that strategy. I'm going to take that note and take that forward. I love that, to give people an opportunity to better get to know you. So, for me, because I am an author, I have a tangible way to leave my expertise, to leave, my imprint, legacy, like I was talking about before. But I was thinking when you asked or you prompted us, Robbie, I was thinking, my first job was at the library. So I geek out on going into the library, love the physical book, and a full circle moment for me is to see my book in the library. So because I'm an author, my book is in the library, and it just made me really feel good about myself. So I know we're talking about business, but there are some other quality moments about being an author that speaks to my soul, and that is one of them.
Yes, that's amazing. I love that full circuit moment for you. CB, how would you answer the because I'm an author?
It was always on my bucket list to have a book published. And I've said to people, you know what? It's really not about how much you sell in terms of books. Books are your new business card. It gives you credibility beyond where you ever imagined. When I started writing the book on courage, people said, but Brene Brown, I said, time out. Brene Brown has her niche, and I will not read any of her books until I finish my courage series, because I don't want to be accused of anything. But we're talking about the difference between somebody saying you must have courage versus how do you have courage? And my book is about how do you have courage? And I've coined the phrase micro courage, which talks to everyday acts that you do that get you to your goal. And that is micro courage, and that is courage. And there's a 7-step process that I talk about to get you to that space. So
how does being an author sort of separate you out now that you help? Well, one, I guess it helps you coin that term, so that you get to claim the origin of this idea, this concept.
Mm-hmm. So it's really helped me differentiate between other people that have written books on courage. And I did my research first, and a lot of the books on courage have to relate to religion, which was surprising to me. But I feel like it has carved out a very specific niche to me, that micro courage, that ability to say during 5 pandemics, when you're feeling very low and you don't know what's next, it's those little acts that'll get you through the day and get you even further in your goals. Suppose you want to be a C-suite person. Suppose you want to have a career. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's not one gulp. It's bite by bite. And that's what I'm talking about. So it's differentiating me from other people in the courage field, and it has identified me as the courage person that you get to your goal.
Yeah, the idea of being a recognized expert, the book really helps make that happen really overnight.
And I just want to add, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, in that I wrote this in terms of personal belief. How do you get to courage every single day in your life? But what it turns out is that it's really for organizations, because organizations who have setbacks, and then everybody feels awful. My days with Fortune 500 companies, you were out if you didn't have constant success. The fact is that when you read this book, you'll realize that failure is a life's university, and you can then take it to gold.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you mentioned, CB, was that you resisted reading certain content before writing your book. I had that same feeling for my first book, because my first book was about networking at events and conferences. So I didn't want to accidentally grab someone else's concepts and just weave it in. And I wanted everything to be from my brain, because it was my body of work. I mean, I had spent at that point probably 8 years speaking about that topic, and it was something that felt very personal, very much mine. I developed it over all those years. And it's interesting how you want to lay claim to what you know, and be known and differentiated in a sometimes very crowded space. And so I think having a book solidifies that. I've also had authors on here who then change their mind or change their position from an earlier book that they first wrote as they grew and learned. And they said it was still useful. I'm still glad I said it when I said it, because it was what I meant. But I'm also okay now I either took that off the market, or I de-emphasized that, because now I'm really focusing on this other piece I think is more important, because the world's changed, or the topic, my understanding. So I just think being an author is like a very brave thing to do. And we're speaking about courage, because you are putting your words and your concepts out there for others to respond to, which is a review. we're like asking for that feedback, either affirmation or critique. And that is a very brave thing. I think for folks who are debating whether to take this step, I think micro courage is something you can think about. And it might be speaking to 4 or 5 people who would be those ideal readers, and getting something from them about whether this is the right path, so that you can keep going, and then talk about it, and get on a podcast and talk about it, and then do a workshop on it. And just like the work you're doing in a book should never be the first time you're speaking about it. Like, it should be a body of work that you've owned for a little while in some capacity. As we wrap up here,
I just want to add one thing. There is a deficit, because now when I say, oh God, I don't know if I could do that, people say to me, you're the courage person. So be careful of what you write.
Yeah, try writing one on resilience.
Right. Yeah, no setbacks allowed, Jennifer.
Here's the soundbite I use is, when you write a book on resilience, you get a lot of opportunities to practice.
Yes.
Well, it's also about being human, right? I think you get to be real and relatable in a way that allows others to access the content and recognize in themselves the ability to move forward. You're both living that. As we wrap up here, I'd love for you to share how people can find you and follow your work. And I'll kick it off with CB. So CB, how can people find you and follow your work?
Just type CB Bowman in LinkedIn or Google. And I'm all about social media. So be glad to talk to anyone out there about micro courage and courage.
And by the way, I'm going to put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. So if you don't have a pen, you can just go check out that link and get all these resources. Jennifer, how can people find you and follow your work?
Well, my website is leadershiftsinsights.com. So that's our website. And then, certainly I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those places. So Jennifer Eggers, Executive Advisor on Facebook, and then LinkedIn is at Eggers.
Fantastic. And Simone, how can people find you and follow your work?
Yes, you can find me at connectwithsimone.com, but I am also on all the social media channels, LinkedIn primarily, and Instagram and Facebook as well.
Fantastic. We're going to put all those links, plus links to your books, your social links, your websites, all of those things in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. You know what? We'll look up your podcast links for those of you who have podcasts. Since you've mentioned them, we'll put those in the links there as well. Also at bizbookpubhub.com, you're going to find information about our monthly free virtual networking events, the Kindle Cross Promotion campaign that we mentioned earlier that I host 3 times a year. And of course, a connection to meet all these amazing experts who can guide you through writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a book that you want to turn into a business asset. Thank you so much, panel, for joining us. Really appreciate this conversation.
Thank
you, Robbie.